ESPN College Game Day podcast. Listened to it early this morning. Pete Thamel at the 32-minute mark listing the top 4 candidates for expansion for the SEC and the Big Ten. Pete Thamel starts by saying the people at Florida State and Clemson don't like to hear this. Welcome to episode 341 of College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. And share the video with your family and friends. Let's not waste any more time. Pete Thamel on ESPN College Game Day podcast. We provide a link in the description. You can listen to the whole thing. We're just going to go through the bullet points here of this podcast of this morning. Pete Thamel starts out by saying conferences that go beyond 16 schools, it's more of a consortium than a conference. It's going to be difficult to keep these conferences together. It's going to be hard to satisfy the interest of all the schools in these larger conferences. He gives the example of, should the Ohio State Buckeyes have the same media money revenue as Indiana? Should Michigan and Northwestern have the same amount of money coming in from the Big Ten? Should Alabama and Vanderbilt have the same amount of media money coming in from the SEC? That's just one example of how difficult it's going to be to keep these larger and larger conferences together, to keep them unified. Pete Thamel went on to say, look, the SEC is happy at 16 schools. They don't have to grow. They don't want to grow. However, the SEC is probably going to have to play some defense against the Big Ten in the years ahead. Pete Thamel paints a picture, an illustration of Birmingham looking through a pyroscope and looking at the suburbs of Chicago, Rosemont, Illinois. And Rosemont, Illinois, suburbs of Chicago having a periscope and looking at through their scope towards Birmingham, Alabama. SEC and the Big Ten are keeping eyes on each other. And however that plays out here in the next wave of realignment, it's going to tell the future of college football and college athletics. So Pete Thamel says, look, the SEC, they're happy, but they know, and we know here at Peek Around the Corner, and we've been reporting to you for months, that the Big Ten, they were always going to go west again with Oregon and Washington, and then they were going to go east to the southeast. And of course, the SEC knows this as well. So Pete Thamel then went on to list the top expansion candidates. He doesn't say particularly this is the SEC's top 4 candidates or the Big Ten top 4 potential expansion candidates. He left that out in the open. He didn't really give one way or the other. But I believe he's talking from a ESPN SEC's perspective. And he lists them as the following. And we've heard this exact same ranking from ESPN reporters months ago. So this should not come as a surprise. It should be just another wake-up call for Florida State and Clemson. Pete Thamel lists them in this ranking. Number 1, North Carolina. Number 2, Virginia. Number 3, Clemson. Number 4, Florida State. And then Pete Thamel says, or it could be number 3, Florida State, and Clemson 4 because of the viewership. Either way, it don't matter. Pete Thamel made his point. Look, the rankings don't surprise us. Again, ESPN has said this exact same ranking. Paul Feinbaum has said this on his show, the talking head, the figurehead of the SEC ESPN relationship, the communication, the propaganda. North Carolina, number 1. Okay, that's cool. That's fine. Sounds good on paper. Here's the problem with North Carolina. They're not aligned. We've talked about it in the live show last night. If you missed it, go ahead and watch it. Live show, Peek Around the Corner, December 7th. North Carolina is not aligned. Their chancellor, Mike Gustowicz, has just left for the Michigan State job. He was always a silent Big Ten supporter. If North Carolina if he could have made the realignment move with North Carolina, if the opportunity had arisen in the last few years, if it wasn't for the grant of rights, Mike Gusowich would have pushed North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill to the Big Ten. It doesn't mean he would have been successful, because there are large voices at North Carolina that want the school to become an SEC school. The donors, the money perch, they're split. The board, split. The fan base, more on the SEC side. The athletic director, the athletic department, and the president, or at least this president, was more on the Big Ten side. The North Carolina is not aligned on their future. They haven't decided who they're going to be yet. So North Carolina, big question point, because they don't know who they are, but they're going to decide that here soon. Who's ever going to be the next chancellor in North Carolina, whatever faction wins that battle, is going to have the inside track on determining the future of North Carolina. Stay in the ACC 10 more years, or go to the SEC or the Big Ten. Number 2, Virginia on that list. That was a big part of our show last night on a live show. It's going to be nearly impossible for Virginia to separate themselves away from Virginia Tech. The politicians are getting involved everywhere, but particularly in the state of Virginia. It's not just the Attorney General of the state of Virginia. You thought UCLA separating themselves from California, Berkeley was a difficult task? It's going to be looking like child's play compared to if Virginia tries to leave Virginia Tech in their wake. If a conference is going to take Virginia, there's a high probability. It's been told to us firmly, strongly, by multiple big-time money perch. If you're going to take Virginia, you're going to have to take Virginia Tech. Now, let's get to the number 3, number 4, according to Pete Thamel's list, Clemson and Florida State. Again, this is what were Pete Thamel's words. A little bit after the 32-minute mark. You can listen to yourself. We provide a link in the description box. People at Florida State and Clemson. This is Pete Thamel saying this. Pete Thamel. These are Pete Thamel's words, not peek around the corner. Pete Thamel said the following. People at Florida State and Clemson don't like to hear this, when he put them at number 3 and number 4 in the candidate list. They don't like to hear this. And so what Pete Thamel is saying is Florida State and Clemson have been told this multiple times. And yes, they have. By the SEC's ESPN, own media people have been saying this. Again, just another elbow, just another shot thrown at Florida State and Clemson. Yes, North Carolina, the state of North Carolina and state of Virginia would bring new population, new demographics to the conference. The SEC network would sell like hotcakes in the state of North Carolina and the state of Virginia. Neither of them, the state of North Carolina or the state of Virginia, neither state is SEC or Big Ten country. So you can understand the rankings. But again, people at Florida State and Clemson don't like to hear this. And so basically what Pete Thamel is saying, this is not the first time they have heard this. And it isn't. And it won't be the last time. Florida State and Clemson, but particularly Florida State, has gotten the message, SEC and ESPN. They have received it over and over and over again, particularly in the playoff committee on Saturday. They've got the message, and they've got the will to make a change here in the first quarter of 2024. Put down your comments and thoughts in the comments section below the video. What do you think about Pete Thamel? Once again, putting out the message, Florida State and Clemson are behind North Carolina and Virginia in the expansion list for the SEC. Not a surprise, but more of a reality check. Once again, just days after the playoff committee snubs Florida State, just days after ESPN snubbed Florida State. Wow. Buckle up. Brace for impact. First quarter of 2024 is almost here. As Pete Thamel said, the SEC, they're happy at 16, but they know. They have the pyroscope. They're looking at the suburbs of Chicago. The SEC knows they're going to have to be playing some defense against the Big Ten. Until next time, from all of us at PATC, to all of you, please you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.